It ain't none cut that off. Hey, cut that off. I'm just playing. Okay, I'm just playing. No, seriously. I'm literally just playing. Because in this culture of hyper individualism, all this, I don't owe nobody nothing. Just cut them off, sis. Don't let them play with you. That can turn into a slippery slope. And sometimes, just sometimes, we can get a little bit too quick and dirty with those scissors. As someone whose cutoff game has had the potential to be quite lethal, and also, ironically, someone that is recovering from being a grade A people pleaser, I've actually come to learn that a very delicate balance is needed. Because on one hand, no, I don't want to be a lone wolf all of my life, but on the other hand, I also don't want to be a pushover either. And we, as people, we as a collective, don't want people to take advantage of us, right? But on the flip side, if we never encounter any relationships that challenge us and cause us healthy levels of discomfort, how will we ever get the opportunity to grow? One thing that I've really struggled with in my journey of self-trust is knowing when to give people grace and when to let them go. And baby, when I let people go, I let them go. All right. Cut off, blocked on everything. I'm never gonna see your face again. But that's besides the point. Okay. The point is, when something feels weird in a friendship, I actually spend a lot of time mulling over if I should stick it out, if I should just chill and assess the scene for a while, or if I should just exit the friendship. And after a lot of inner work, I think I've finally mastered a fair balance. And if you're watching this video, it's very likely that you could be struggling with the same kind of thing. It's possible that you could be having the same kind of dilemma in your friendships. Maybe you're working on learning to trust your intuition more. Maybe you're working on ending your people-pleasing tendencies. But at the end of the day, you probably don't have a real framework to follow or a guide to help you kind of navigate these decisions as you're figuring yourself out along the way. Because we all know if you go on social media, all you're gonna see is some self-righteous soundbite. But I think what people like us really need is a framework, is a guide. And I have taken the time and the liberty to make one. But first, I'm going to share how this framework even came to be. So, the dilemma of being unsure of someone, whether to keep trusting them, keep giving them grace, or just deciding they shouldn't be in your life anymore, like I said, has been my Achilles heel, okay? It's been whooping me down. All right. I've struggled with this in romantic relationships, but I really see it the most and more frequently in my friendships. I am a quirky kind of person, okay? I'm like super open-minded. Sometimes I feel that I can even be too open-minded at times with certain things. My most natural instinct when I meet someone and I like someone is to accept them exactly as they are, even if they're really different from me, even if they happen to be struggling with patterns and habits that I've happened to outgrow, even if they believe in things that I don't believe in. I tend to not harshly judge people, and whatever I perceive about someone, I don't usually allow it to change how I choose to treat them, because I can really see value in everyone, and I can find something I like about anyone. And this has served as somewhat of a blessing and a curse. Because on one hand, it's allowed me to make so many different connections throughout life, right? But it's often put me in positions where I was forced to implement very specific boundaries and shield myself in very specific ways, especially when the disrespect or misalignment wasn't super over the top, obvious, evil, malicious, or in your face. Okay, so let me give an example of something that can feel weird in a friendship, but isn't exactly overt in nature. I could have a friend who I happen to perceive as a little male-centric, right? Not a big deal. Now, she may not feel like she is, and I could be completely wrong about her, right? But notice, I'm not saying that she has to change. I'm not moralizing anything about her, and I'm not saying that she's a bad person. I don't cast her aside. I don't make her feel weird about it. I don't bring it up to her because I still enjoy her. She's fun to be around, right? I don't allow what I think about her to influence the way that I treat her in our friendship. I just let her be who she is, just making an observation while also keeping in mind that this particular thing is something that could influence her behavior or opinions because I can have a perception about someone without it dominating everything. And I don't like to assume that there's an issue until an issue happens. So where does the issue happen? The issue starts when this friend begins pulling me into her script. Like if I share with her that I'm not dating, I'm chilling, and she's constantly asking me to go meet guys with her. Or if I say I don't dream of marriage and kids, and she keeps projecting this fantasy image of me meeting the one and having a bunch of kids. Because she happens to be centering those things in her life, she's also wanting to center it in my life and my experience. Now, the disrespect here isn't malicious or loud or obvious, right? It's actually very, very subtle. And it eventually becomes a dismissal and erasure of who I am and what I actually care about. Because if every time we link up, I gotta worry about you trying to force your worldview onto me, that's an issue. If every time we link up, you're trying to force marriage and babies onto me, that's an issue. It's kind of like telling somebody that you don't eat pork, right? But they keep offering you pork. Like, come on, what are we doing? Now, I can give someone a grace for the first couple of times that they do something like that because they probably don't realize they're doing it, right? But if it happens often enough, too many times, I have to consider if I want to continue in a friendship like that. And over time, dynamics like this can weigh on a person because it's really low-key erasure. And a person trying to force you into their narrative instead of engaging with who you are is a very subtle and irritating form of control. And patterns that follow a similar thread can show up in all kind of friendships in different contexts, right? Times where you're wondering if this person is your friend and they're just having a tone deaf moment versus this person is not my friend and I can't continue trying to be friends with them. I have been in friendships where I realized that person only would call me when they needed something. I've had guy friends who would try to romanticize me in some weird kind of way. I've had a friend before that would give me really backhanded compliments, and I was like, am I tripping about this or is this really happening? I've had friends that I've overextended for multiple times, and the moment I didn't do what they wanted me to do, they would give me zero grace. Like weird things that you notice that make you feel uncomfy and you don't exactly know why or where it's coming from. But there's a key pattern here, and that is the key word, is pattern. So if you ever find yourself wondering about a friend, mulling things over in your mind, you aren't really sure which direction to go. Yes, you have to consider who they are and what the nature of your relationship is, things like that. But at the end of the day, the thing you will need to pay attention to the most is if their behavior is a pattern. And if that pattern evokes a feeling in you that is tolerable or intolerable. So I did a thing. Okay, as much as I talk about this type of stuff, right? As much as I yap about this type of stuff, I should come up with a solution to said issues, right? I should be the change that I wish to see in the world. So I made a tool for recovering people pleasers or people who just want to lean more into their discernment and self-trust. When you know something in a friendship is really bothering you, but you don't want to react from fear, avoidance, or people pleasing. Something that just asks you to slow down and think. We gotta use our thinking caps. Let me open it up in my iPad, girl. Hold on. It's a workbook called When Something Feels Off, okay? And you can get it from the link in my description box. Basically, it's just a mini workbook, just a few pages, okay? Nothing crazy. And it has 6 sections for reflection. And in the workbook, I pose a series of questions for you to answer and ponder over. What you do is anytime you have a weird or off feeling about a friend or a situation involving a friend, right? And you're wondering how this is making you feel. Oh, God. And what are some ways you can approach the issue? All right, section 1 is going to be called the internal check. Here, you're checking in with yourself and seeing how you feel before you even get started on the rest of the issue. Then you move on to section 2, which is about determining if whatever is going on in this situation is a pattern or an incident. This is very key. On to section 3, we have the good faith assessment. This is basically questions that are asking you, does this person act in good faith? And it kind of lets you know where the conflict resolution vibes stand. Section 4 is the relational capacity check. This is where we inspect the nature of the relationship. And we also have a cost versus benefit analysis check, where you're going to list the pros of continuing this friendship with a person and the cons of continuing the friendship, because you need to see it in black and white. Section 5 is possible response options, and it's pretty much showing you what are your options in terms of actions after you're able to see the full scope of what's going on. Now, in this workbook, I'm not going to tell you what choice to make or not. I'm not about to tell you, yes, you should cut off that person, or yes, you should keep being friends with that person. I'm not going to give you those answers. There's not really a right or wrong choice. It's just your choice, right? It's up to you to decide at the end of the day what moves you want to make. Section 6 is the self-trust integration. And this section is just basically meant to help you softly integrate what you've noticed in this dynamic instead of trying to rush toward a conclusion. Because at the end of the day, self-trust is not about making perfect decisions. It's about listening to yourself, staying present with what you notice, and honoring your inner signals without judgment and without the gaslighting. Now, you can use this tool whenever you feel uncomfy with a friend. You can even use this tool to look back on times you did feel uncomfy with a friend if you happen to need reminders of how this friendship has been going. It is pretty much a guided journaling tool. However, this tool is not meant to be used to determine if you're better than anybody or, say who's worth your time and who's not worth your time. It's not even about that. And it's not a tool to judge all your friends, right? It's a tool to strengthen your discernment. It's about learning to interpret discomfort accurately, because a lot of our feelings, as we're feeling all the things and experiencing all of the things, sometimes it's necessary for our feelings to be interpreted instead of dismissed. And we talk about discernment all day long, right? We say, you need to have discernment, blah, 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 blah. We talk about it like discernment is a virtue, but it's actually a skill. And sometimes it's a skill that has to be built, because sometimes trusting your gut isn't the only thing you need to be doing, especially when your self-trust is still developing. And I think my workbook is something wonderful to have in your discernment tool belt. Also, another disclaimer, okay? This workbook isn't for the girlies who are saying, I don't owe anybody anything. I cut off anybody and I don't care. It's not that deep. I'm not talking to you, nor will I ever be talking to you. This is for the individuals that truly want to work on their relational skills. This workbook is printable as individual worksheets, or you can download it, import it into your iPad, or pull it up on your phone, whatever the case may be. And I'll leave you with this. On my channel, I talk a lot about creating intentional community. And I think the first thing to get a good grasp on as you create community is understanding yourself. And I literally say this all the time. I sound like a broken record at this point. Take the time to learn what things make you feel safe and nurtured, what things make you feel unsafe. That's what's going to make your discernment sharper. And that's what allows us to understand what kinds of energy to extend to who. Because no, you don't have to cut off everybody that annoys you unless you just legitimately hate people. But you also don't have to give everybody 50 bajillion chances to get it right. Balance is possible. And when you can clearly see what's happening in a dynamic, then you can make informed decisions instead of just automatically leaning into emotional reactivity. And sometimes that means adjusting your expectations for the person. Sometimes it means decreasing a person's level of access to you. Sometimes it means just having one honest conversation. Or sometimes it means going no contact and just outgrowing each other. Many, many options to choose from. But to see the options, you have to have a clear perspective first. If you've ever felt dismissed in a friendship or felt pressured to be a version of yourself that fits someone else, if you've ever felt confused about if you're being too sensitive or feeling something real, my workbook is for you. So go grab it. Link is in the description box. Get more grounded in your decisions. Well, that's all I have for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, stay gorgeous, and I will see you in the next one.